Good morning, Hope College. Hey, before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that many of you are aware that senior leaders of the college have been working through some rather challenging issues lately, and I just want to express my appreciation and the appreciation of others for the support that you've shown and for your prayers. I think it's important that all of us stay in prayer at a time when we're making important decisions about our college. So thank you for that. And I want to just also reflect with you today a little bit on some things that I think might be just right at the end of the semester as we try to take stock of the year that we've had individually, ways that we began the year and ways that we're ending the year. I know all of you are trying to finish strong. It's that time of year when you're sprinting to the finish line, trying to grab that extra little bit of energy that you need to get it done. And so much of our focus at this time of year is on all those things that just have to get done, checking the boxes. What are we doing about our exams and our projects and our papers and all those things to finish up? And you know, all of that's important, and it's all right at the heart of where you need to be focusing now. But at Hope College, we're also constantly reminding ourselves that the Hope experience is about more than just downloading information and content and knowledge. It's about more than just developing employable skills. All those things matter. You need to leave here ready for life and ready for work. But this experience is also one that has been handcrafted for each of you in a way that provides you with an opportunity to grow as a person, to actually become a different person than you were when you arrived here. Indeed, a different person than you were when you began this year. And I want to ask you just to reflect a little bit on that with me for the next few minutes and how this experience over the last year might have actually changed you in some ways, and hopefully in some ways that you can look back on and recognize that you're actually becoming the sort of individual that you look in the mirror and feel pretty good about. I hope that that's the case for you. You know, at Hope, our mission statement talks about preparing people for lives of leadership and service in a global society. I don't know that there's ever been a time when our global society has needed leadership, has needed people of character, people who are able to lead in ways that actually serve the common good from a moral perspective. And several years ago, I was in South Africa. I'd been invited to come and lead a retreat for college and university presidents there. It was called the Stellenbosch Seboka on higher education and ethical leadership. We had about 20 presidents there. It was a small retreat, and the word Seboka means a gathering for a common cause. And the whole purpose of this 4-day gathering was to think together about how do colleges and universities actually shape leaders for the future of their country, of South Africa, a country that's in great need of leadership, a country that has suffered in recent years from less than desirable leadership at times. And so as we were thinking together, we were joined during this retreat by the Nobel Peace Prize laureate and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And he was very much a part of our conversation as we began to imagine some of the attributes of leaders. What are some of the things that we might think we would look for in people that we would like to see in leadership roles of responsibility? And you can imagine that that would be a conversation any of us might have. You start sort of ticking off things that we admire in others, things that we think are important in terms of us being able to trust others in leadership roles. Well, you know, naturally the conversation at some point turned to, so who are those people? Do we actually know people who embody these attributes? Are there people that we've encountered in our own lives that maybe we can look to as exemplars of what it looks like when a person is really a developed leader? And you could imagine in South Africa, Nelson Mandela was a person that we spent a lot of time talking about. There was much discussion. I remember one of the presidents of, I think, Cape Town, University of Cape Town, who said, how do we create more Mandelas? And then the conversation, well, what is a Mandela, right? And what was it that shaped Nelson Mandela to be the kind of person that everybody can admire? We also asked ourselves, where do we get more Desmond Tutus? And Archbishop Tutu is a very humble man. He didn't like that conversation very much, but I think most of us thought it would be good if we could figure out what we need to do to find more people like him and lift them up into roles of leadership. And so I would ask you today to think about who are the people in your lives that you see as role models? Who are the people that you might look to and say, you know, that's a person, if I could just be a little bit more like her or like him, that's somebody who is the kind of individual that I can look up to, and I would be very pleased if other people would see me in the way that I see this person. You know, at Hope, we try to provide you with a lot of good role models. We offer you great professors and members of our staff. We offer you a wide range of people so that there's somebody for everyone. I hope that each one of you is connecting in a personal kind of intimate friendship with people who are here and available to you to be your role models and your exemplars. But you know, you can also be good role models for one another. I was at the hockey banquet yesterday and had the opportunity to hear our seniors each get up and reflect a little bit on their experience as a hockey player at Hope College. And I was struck by how many of them referred to other players as their role models and talked about what they had learned from their fellow students and how they had become a better person for having been on a team with that guy. I think that's actually an important thing for us to remember. But you know, each of us needs role models that suit us, right? Not the person who's the ideal role model for one of you may not be the ideal person for another. But I want to suggest today that there actually is a role model that we can all share, and I think all of us as Christians would recognize that Jesus Christ actually is a role model for us in the living of our lives. You know, Paul talks more than once about how we are to be imitators of Christ. And he says that he is working to be an imitator of Christ. This idea that this is a person that I want to be more like. And we know a lot about Christ. We know a lot about the character of Jesus Christ. We know a lot about the way that Jesus lived and loved and worked and served with others through his ministry during his time with us on earth. There's a lot to learn there. But one thing that I think we sometimes overlook is that Jesus, like the rest of us, actually had to learn those things. You know, we kind of stop and think, well, you know, if Christ is divine, you know, he sort of came ready-made. But we actually read at the end of Luke, in the last verse of the 2nd chapter, Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and all the people. He grew in wisdom. I think if wisdom is developmental for Jesus, it's probably developmental for all of us. We all have room to grow. And then in the book of 2 Peter, in the 1st chapter, we get what I think is a really nice, succinct little model for what it looks like for us to develop as people of faith, and I would say just as good people, actually, if we think about ourselves as Christians pursuing Christ as role model. In 2 Peter, we read these words, "And to this end, along with your faith, zealously develop," now that's the key word, zealously develop morality, and along with morality, knowledge. And along with knowledge, self-control. And along with self-control, perseverance. And along with perseverance, godliness. And along with godliness, love of the brethren, or other Christians. And along with love of the brethren, love of all people. And so each of these things, as it's presented to us, is presented as something that we actually have to develop. None of us are as godly as we can be. None of us persevere as well as we might. None of us have as much knowledge as we might have if we work at gaining more knowledge. And none of us can love as well today as we might love in the future if we just work on becoming more loving and learning how to be people that share the love of Christ with others in a generous way. I think it's actually encouraging. It's encouraging to know that Scripture presents to us the idea that we're not expected to be perfect. We're not expected to be fully formed, but we are actually invited into a process of formation and development. And I think it's interesting that we actually have a great role model in Jesus Christ as one who not only embodies so many of the things that all of us strive to be, but actually had to do some development to get there, had to grow in wisdom. You know, the last one is one that I just want to touch on here as I finish up, and that is that if you think about this progression, and it is kind of a progression of starting with faith, right? If we don't have anything else, well, we start with faith and we trust God. And then we progress to morality, become a better person, try to live our lives in a way that's consistent with that faith. Knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, and then finally love. Love is kind of the end. And love is, of course, at the heart of the Christian gospel. Love is actually at the heart of what it means to live the Christian life. And so we recognize that love is sort of the final achievement in this progress that we make as people who are developing. In Philippians, in the 1st chapter, 9th verse, we read, "And this I pray, that your love may abound still more and more in real knowledge and all discernment," that your love may abound still more and more. It's to increase. We also read in 1 Thessalonians, "And may the Lord cause you to increase and abound in love for one another and for all." We're not done. We need to find ways to actually challenge ourselves to be more loving of other people. You know, I think that Hope College students are a group of students as a whole that actually exemplify this in so many ways on a day-to-day basis. People visit our campus and they comment on the ways that our students relate to one another. I've heard it many times. Just 2.5 years ago, we had a team visiting us from the Higher Learning Commission. These are the people that accredit the college. They came from 5 other colleges and universities, not Christian institutions, but institutions that can judge the quality of our academic program very well. And as they were leaving after a week-long site visit on campus, they met with me in my office just to debrief about some of the things that they had learned about Hope as they were looking at our quality. And they said, before we start, we just want to tell you that we have been observing your students all week. We've watched them in the cafeteria, we've watched them interact with each other on campus, and we are struck by how loving they are toward one another. Well, you know, I think that's been my observation as well. Now, it's not to say there aren't some jerks out there, none in this room, you know, I get that. And it's not everybody's experience every day, I understand. And I hear about some of those too. But I do think that the students on this campus have actually created a sort of culture of compassion and care. And I'm grateful for that because I think all of you and all of us benefit from that student culture that is uniquely the Hope student culture. And so I'd like to just challenge you here as we wrap up the academic year in the next few weeks. Take a little bit of time and reflect on your own development since the beginning of this year. Ask yourself, looking back on where I was as I began at the beginning of the 2015-16 year, am I a better person today? Have I grown in my faith? Have I grown in character? Am I more like the person that I want other people to look at as a role model? It's good to take stock of that from time to time. Maybe use that little list of 7 attributes that you'll find there in the first chapter of 2 Peter and ask yourself, have you been growing in your faith, in morality, in knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, and love? And I'll just conclude with some words from Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who is a person I admire greatly. He says, our maturity will be judged by how well we are able to agree to disagree, and yet continue to love one another, to care for one another, and to cherish one another, and seek the greater good of the other. I think those are very wise words, and to suggest that that's a mark of maturity sounds right to me. Desmond Tutu was also asked one time, why are you so optimistic about the future? And I look out at you, and I feel a great optimism about the future. But his answer to that question was this. He said, I'm not optimistic. I am a prisoner of hope. And may we all be prisoners of hope as well. Go in peace.